Hello students, I am Dr. Parminder Kaur, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, Basis College. Today, in the series of developmental growth models and strategies that we've been discussing, I'll be talking about Rostow stages of economic growth. Now, this piece of literature has been widely commented upon, circulated, criticized, and talked about. Rostow was an economist who essentially gave various stages of development through which an economy essentially passes. Is it similar to, the process of the journey of an individual from childhood to adolescence to maturity to old age? So what does Rostow say? Rostow says that the economy too has to essentially pass through these, the path of development of the economy is well documented. So this economy has to essentially pass through the traditional society, from traditional to the conditions, preconditions of takeoff, actual takeoff, drive to maturity, and high mass consumptions. So these are the 5 stages through which the economy passes until it becomes a fully self-sustained, developed economy. Now, one by one, I'll be taking you through the various stages and what are the key features of each stage. The first stage, that is of a traditional society. A traditional society is characterized by primitive technology. It is dominated by agriculture, and the technique that is used for production is at times very primitive in nature. The level of output is very low. The incomes are low, the productivity is low, and the farming that is done in the traditional society is basically subsistence farming. That means it is for satisfaction of the needs of the family, and the main focus is not to produce for exchange, but to meet the needs of the family. Only the surplus gets traded in the market. Now, the size of the capital stock is very low. The reason for this is that income is low. As a result of low income, the savings are low, as a result of which investment is low. This low investment leads to low level of capital formation, and because of low level of capital formation, the productivity of the sector is also very low. So this is the first stage that every economy essentially passes through. The next stage is a stage of preconditions of takeoff. Now, what is the meaning of the word takeoff? Takeoff can be actually compared to an aircraft that leaves the ground and becomes airborne. So before the aircraft becomes airborne, what are the conditions? What is the critical speed that the aircraft has to cross? Or what are the conditions that are required for an economy to be, ready for a takeoff? So the most important first point is creation of a social overhead capital. It is often referred to as SOC. It essentially means creation of basic infrastructure in the economy, infrastructure in the terms of roadways, railways, waterways, airways, basic electricity that has to be generated, heavy and basic industries to be. So all these needs to be developed before, an environment for investment is created in the economy. Now, at times, this technology transfer also takes place in the agricultural sector, as a result of which mechanization, that is more and more use of machines and increase in productivity, takes place in the agriculture sector. Now, very important and striking feature of this preconditions of takeoff is that there is increase in the savings, investment and capital formation. Because of increase in the productivity of the agricultural sector, incomes increase, but it is not the agriculture sector that is going to contribute to the capital formation in the nation, but it is the manufacturing sector. So for development of the manufacturing sector, there is expansion of imports. So if you look at our own country when we were in the process of establishment of an industrial base for our country, there were huge BOP problems. A large amount of capital was imported from the developed nations so that we could lay the foundation of industrial foundation for our own economy. At times, the funds might not be generated domestically. We need to borrow money from abroad, and remittance income is required, and overseas aid too at times is required to fill in this gap of reduced low level of savings and income in the country. The third stage in the Rostow stages of economic growth is the takeoff stage. This is the most important stage in the history of an economy, and it is characterized by a relatively smaller, shorter duration of 2 to 3 decades. Now, what happens during the takeoff stage? There is an emergence of a leading sector, and this leading sector, provides the stimulus to the economy to be on the path of development. For example, let's say there is investment in railways. So railways becomes the primary leading sector, and this is railways. Now, as a result of railways being developed, there is supplementary sectors that need to be developed. Supplementary sector, that means for railways to develop, we need to have iron and steel, coal, electricity. All those things also need to be developed. And third sector is the derived sector. As a result of increase in incomes, output, employment, investment in the economy, there's an increased demand for housing. There's an increased demand for education, increased demand for health facilities. So one sector leads to development of other sector. This is a very important feature of the takeoff stage. Most importantly, as most of the economists have emphasized over and over again, that the rate of capital formation dependent upon the savings and investment in the economy has to significantly increase. So the rate of investment has to go above 10% of the national income. Essentially, that means the rate of growth of savings and investments should be more or higher than the rate of growth of population. Now, it is not only the economic infrastructure that requires to change, it is the institutional framework. So institutional and cultural framework of the economy needs to be change that is able to capture the impulse of development that has been generated by the leading sectors. That means the economy should be ready to adapt the changes. It should not resist changes. It should be able to adapt. There should be mobility. There should be reskilling of the labor force. All these are essential features that will lead to the takeoff stage. After the takeoff stage comes the next stage, that is drive to maturity. The fourth stage of Rostow stages of economic growth is the drive to maturity. In this, there is change not only in the working class, the ruling class, there is a change in the societal change that is observed. Now, initially the workforce was more, unskilled. So workforce becomes more skilled. The real wages rise. There is a shift from the rural sector to the urban sector and skilling. So basically, the quality, the output of this labor force that is engaged in the sector increases. There is also change in the entrepreneurial class. The rugged, hard-working entrepreneurs are replaced by polished, sophisticated, polite entrepreneurs, and the society starts getting bored of the technological changes or the miracles of industrialization, and it's looking at and wanting something new. The fifth stage and the last stage, according to Rostow, is that of age of high mass consumption. Mass consumption of consumer durable goods and services. Now, as the incomes increase, output increase, the demand increases, as a result of which there is a significant increase in the consumer expenditure, and the occupational structure, the contribution, the sectoral contribution to the GDP also changes in favor of the tertiary sector, and there is an emergence of a tertiary sector activity and expansion of the middle class of consumers. Now, once the basic needs of the people are met, there comes a desire for the nation to establish itself and to rightfully seek its place in the global high table. So then comes this feeling of, pursuit of a national policy to enhance power. So America today is, has been in the stage of high mass consumption for a very, very long time. And the desire for America to emerge as one of the strongest nations of the world and a superpower is overpowering, and every nation, once it reaches this stage, starts to assert itself in the global high table. And there is a change in the outlook of the governments. Now, the process of development essentially leads to accentuation of inequalities in the society. Society, essentially, the economy is functioning on the basic principle of survival of the fittest. So, in the process, there's this creation of inequality. Then comes the role of the government, and the government becomes, focuses on the establishment of a welfare state where basic needs of the people are met, where the inequalities that exist in the society are minimized by adoption of the progressive taxation system, and government spends huge amount of monies on the social security schemes and the leisure of the working class. So, age of high mass consumption is characterized by large-scale production of consumer durable goods such as automobiles, houses, electrically operated gadgets. At the same time, economy starts thinking beyond its national boundaries. So essentially, Rostow said that economies will pass through all these stages. Now, there is a criticism, and a lot of economists have questioned the various stages that have been proposed by Rostow, and they question, is it essential that every economy has to necessarily pass through these stages? Is there a clear-cut demarcation between stages, or is there an overlap between these stages? So there are various points on the basis of which this theory is critically analyzed. The first criticism is that there is an overlap between the second and the third stage. Both the stages essentially focus on increase in the savings and investment, and increase in this investment level beyond 10% of the GDP. That will be very important for development of the nation. So there is no clear-cut demarcation of the various stages. Now, there are a number of countries who have not experienced all these 5 stages. For instance, countries such as America, Australia have completely, Canada, they've just started from the second stage. They did not have a traditional stage. They straight away began from the preconditions of takeoff. And there are countries, examples of New Zealand, Australia, where agricultural revolution has been the key primary sector that has provided the stimulus for development of that country. And at times, a number of sub-Saharan countries have received significant external finance, but in spite of the external finance that they've received, they've not been able to achieve the targeted rate of growth. So basically, Simon Kuznets says that essentially most important requirement for development of any nation is increase in the savings, investment and capital formation, and it is not important, and it has not been empirically proven that all the countries essentially will pass through these stages to reach the final stage of high mass consumption. Thank you.